So the first thing I'm going to do here is show you how I've established this 8.5 by 11 page in Photoshop to be used as a backdrop for the portfolio demonstration that I'm going to put together for you. I'm using the examples of Sidney J. Mead, who was an industrial designer and a futurist. Um, I'm doing this because it gives me a chance to talk about Sid and some of his work, and at the same time show you how you might be able to put a portfolio together for yourself. Now it so happens that Sydney shares the same name as my cat, and that's because of the fact that I have admired Sid Mead for many, many years. He was an industrial designer and a graduate of Art Center in California, and was very influential in the world of not only industrial design, product design, transportation design, but as well as movies, as you will see. Anyway, I'm going to pause this and show you how I went about setting up this page to begin with. Back in a second. So the first thing that I did was I went to and established a page size. So I set my set to inches instead of pixels, and I made it a width of 8.5, and made sure that the height was 11, and kept the resolution at 150 dpi, and went ahead and created that. That gave me a document that looks like this. I have a file off to the side over here to my left that has all of Sid Mead's artwork that I'm going to be using in this, and I'm going to be using this signature here, but I have it saved as a PDF, so that's a much cleaner version. So we're going to be installing or bringing that one in. So I'm just going to bring that in as a drag and drop and say OK. And there's the signature that I was going to use. So I'm going to position that in the upper left-hand corner. This may not be exactly where I had it in the version that I'm using. So there's a signature, and what I want to do is I want to extend this line out to kind of act as a header across the top, much like you would do for stationery. But the first thing I need to do, I have to rasterize that layer, and I'm going to zoom in on that just a little bit so that I can make sure that I get the portion of the tail end of that signature that I want. And I'm going to grab that right there, and I'm going to do edit and copy and edit, and then I'm going to do special paste in place. I want it to be exactly over the top of itself. And then I'm going to do edit, transform, and scale. Now to extend that, I don't want to just willy-nilly just go ahead and do that. I'm going to hold down my Shift key, which allows me to extend it horizontally, but not vertically. Oop, not too far. We'll pull it a little bit further. There we go. So now I have Mead's signature with this long line extending beyond it. I'm going to shut off the background, and I'm going to do a layer merge visible. And then I'm going to go ahead and do select color range, because I want to get rid of all the white behind it. Say OK. That selects all of that, and I'm going to delete it. So I should have everything on the background now deleted as far as the color behind the signature is concerned. So I could just simply use this if I wanted to, but I happen to know that I've already decided to set up a color for the entire portfolio that I'm going to demonstrate for you. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to change the color of the background first. So in order to do that, I'm going to go down here to my foreground color, double click, and the color that I have selected has the hexadecimal code of, I'm going to change this right here to 66825, and the lowercase b, and that's this kind of a green color out here. And say OK, and then I'm going to use my paint bucket tool and fill that background in. Oh, I had forgotten that I have to change this because I've got it defaulted to set to a gray color. So I'm going to undo that last thing, edit, undo the paint bucket, and I'm going to make sure that I've got the image mode set to RGB color. And no, I don't want to flatten it. What I want to do is I want to apply that color. There we go. And you can see I've got some problems up here because inside the logo I have some white features and I want to eliminate. So I'm going to go into the and I applied the white to the logo itself. Sorry about that. Edit, undo. And you get to see all the mistakes that I'm making. That's good, because then you'll not make these mistakes yourself. Okay, so I'm going to apply the green to the background. And for some reason this time it doesn't show up in the logo. The logo itself, it dropped that out. I'm not exactly sure why or how that was, but it did it. Okay, so now we have this signature, which is in black on that dark, not dark, but medium gray field. And one of the things that I want to do is I want to redo that logo in a color of itself, or of its own. So in order to do that, I'm going to be on the logo layer up here, layer 1, and I'm going to do select color range and select the logo itself, and you can see that it's highlighted it up here. So everything that was black on there has now been selected. And say OK, and as you can see, I've got the marching ants around it. What I want to do now is I want to do the logo itself in this color. And I have established a color for that as well. Hexadecimal code for that is FCCA03. And say, okay, it's kind of this orange-yellow color. It's a coloration that I very often used. So I'm going to go in here and grab my paintbrush tool and be on the logo layer. It doesn't want to let me color anything in at the moment. And I'm not exactly sure why that is. There we go. Got the paintbrush tool. Now I can go in. Oh, and it's getting a little bit beyond the logo itself. Edit, undo the brush tool. I think I need to reset my selection. So I'm going to pause this for a minute. So what I did, I have gone up here to select and color range, and this time instead of having this arrow set back a little bit here, I moved it all the way up as far as it'll go. And we'll see if that works this time. I was getting some overspray before. Oh, and it's because I haven't changed my color to the color that I wanted it to be. Again, that is FCCA03. Okay, and we'll go ahead and spray that in. Yeah, now it's staying inside of the bounds of the logo selection itself. Okay. Zoom back out here and let release this and see if I've got the whole thing covered. I think I do. Move over here a little bit and hit Control D or Command D to deselect. Yes, it looks like I've gotten all of it. So now what I want to do is I want to duplicate that layer. So I'm going to drag it down here to this icon right next to the trash can. And what I want to do now is I want to do a drop shadow of a slightly darker color of that. So I'm going to go up here again to select color range and pick up that logo again. Make sure my thing is all the way up to 200%, the fuzziness. That's what I was looking for before. I'm going to change this to a slightly darker version for the drop shadow of it. Say OK, you can see what it's going to look like there. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my paintbrush and paint in the drop shadow portion of that logo. You can see it barely shows up on the background right now, but if I drop that underneath, lock the background layer so I don't move that, that's the drop shadow layer, and then I'm going to nudge it down with my tool here a little bit until I get kind of a nice drop shadow effect out of that. There we go. It's just ever so slight, but that's fine. And that's what I want to do. So this is how I have established the background for what I'm going to be using for the logo pages. Anyway, that gives you an idea of how you might institute a background page, and we'll show you very shortly how this is going to be used in InDesign. Okay, all for now. See you guys in the next video.